Thank you, colleagues. The next item of business is a debate on motion 23674 in the name of Bill Kidd on stage 3 of the Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Bill. Now, before the debate begins, I'm required under standing orders to decide whether, in my view, any provision of this bill refers to a protected subject matter, that is, whether it modifies the electoral system or franchise for Scottish parliamentary elections. In my view, in the case of this bill, it does no such thing. Therefore, it does not require a supermajority to be passed at stage 3. So we move on to motion 23674, and I would invite all members who wish to participate in this debate to press their request to speak buttons, and I call on Bill Kidd to speak to and move the motion on behalf of the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee.
Thank you very much indeed, Presiding Officer, and I would like to start off just as is quite right, in thanking very much the SPPA Clerks team for all the work that they've performed here. It's been almost a year since the Parliament agreed to the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee's proposal for a committee bill which would amend the Scotland Act to transfer responsibility for setting the terms of the funding of non-government political parties from the Scottish Government to the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body. And the bill and its accompanying documents were introduced last summer, and I'm delighted to be here today in the Chamber to invite the Parliament to agree to pass it. And the bill seeks very simply to transfer administrative oversight of the so-called short money scheme to the corporate body. This makes sense given that for over 20 years the SPCB has been funding the scheme as part of its budget. In previous speeches, I spoke of the origin of short money payments named after Labour MP Edward Short. The payments were introduced by the Harold Wilson government in 1974 to enable opposition parties to fulfil their parliamentary functions. And the scheme followed a pilot project funded by the Joseph Rowntree Social Service Trust, which funded parliamentary assistance for opposition frontbench spokespeople. The idea was to assist opposition parties to carry out parliamentary duties and counteract the advantage that government ministers enjoy through briefings from civil servants. The assistance provided under the scheme became known as chocolate soldiers, which is a reference to the source of Rowntree's wealth. Just a wee bit of interesting detail there. I wanted to take this opportunity to remind members that the bill is administrative in nature, and any alterations in respect of the funding of non-government parties would always be subject to agreement by the Parliament as a whole. The bill does not interfere with the existing scheme and formula. This will remain in place until such time as this Parliament agrees to change it by means of a formal resolution process. As such, the passage of this bill will not in itself affect the amount paid to parties. It's envisaged that the SPCB, in drawing up a new scheme, will consult before submitting it for formal approval by the whole Parliament, and I move this motion in my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Kidd. And I call the Minister, Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, it may come as little surprise to colleagues, and I suspect no doubt great relief that, consistent with my previous contributions to Parliament scrutiny of this bill, I don't propose to speak for particularly long. I would simply wish to reiterate the key point of the principle that this bill, which I anticipate will shortly successfully complete its passage, embodies the Government's long-held and often expressed view that it is for this Parliament to take the lead on matters relevant to its own operation. As has been noted often during its progress to date, this bill was promoted by the Standards Committee on the basis of Parliament's increased competence as delivered by the statutory framework provided for in the Scotland Act 2016. As such, the bill continues what I would consider to be the ever more natural process of the Parliament developing and establishing its own operational procedures, and in so doing, refining, remodelling and, most importantly of all, reforming the framework inherited upon devolution. Moving to the effect of the bill itself, the Government has made clear its position that it's only right and proper for Parliament to directly determine arrangements under which financial assistance is provided to non-government party groups. I've already put on record the reasoning behind placing that responsibility in the hands of the Executive, namely a need to ensure an arrangement was established in advance of the Parliament formally taking up its responsibilities. The power has not been exercised since then. It would only ever have been deemed appropriate to have done so at the behest of this legislature. However, the framework proposed under the bill is a better way forward, because such matters are for the Parliament and the Parliament alone. As we know, the bill only transfers responsibility for short money, with any alterations to the current funding arrangements subject to parliamentary resolution. Current funding is, of course, drawn from the budget of the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body. It will be for the Corporate Body and ultimately the Parliament to consider what further action, if any, should be taken in the future. That function naturally sits alongside other budgetary considerations overseen by the corporate body, thereby ensuring that any reform is evaluated in that context and with regard to all demands on parliamentary resources. Once again, I would remind colleagues that the current order will remain in force until the first resolution is made under the new framework. Presiding Officer, the Government very much welcomes and is supportive of the committee bill, and I look forward to hearing the views of other members.
Thank you very much, Minister. Could I now call on John Scott to be followed by Elaine Smith? John Scott.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I begin by welcoming the Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Bill and the work of the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee in bringing this committee bill to Parliament. I say this because the introduction of this bill and the Stage 1 process were all carried out before I joined this committee, and therefore acknowledge the work of Jamie Halcroft-Johnson in helping to get this bill to the Stage 3 process today. Of course, I also want to thank others on the committee at that time and since, our clerks and spies, as well as the Finance and Constitution Committee and those on the DPLR Committee for their scrutiny of the bill. So, Presiding Officer, this is a consensual bill that in essence makes a technical change to the Scotland Act to allow a motion of our Parliament to authorise the awarding of financial assistance known as short money to political parties. This authority and job of disbursing short money to political parties will be carried out by the Scottish Parliament corporate body, which is duty-bound to do so in the best interests of a functioning Parliament and which I understand now carries out its work in a consensual way. And a fully functioning Parliament requires a fully functioning democracy. And, as you know, Presiding Officer, a functioning democracy demands that parties other than the parties of government have the ability to hold governments to account. And that ability to hold the party of government to account has never been more needed than it is today. And that is what short money helps opposition parties to do. Access and accountability support our adversarial democracy here in Scotland in our devolved Parliament, where matters of law, of financial management, of budgeting, of education, of health spending are constantly under review, and strong opposition parties must have the resources and ability to be able to challenge and scrutinise government spending and practices. Short money facilitates accountability and scrutiny, and this technical bill allows the allocation of this money to be directly allocated from within our own Parliament, and Scottish Conservatives welcome this change in this bill today. So, Presiding Officer, we welcome this bill today and will be supporting it at decision time tonight. Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Mr Scott. And can I now call Elaine Smith to be followed by Patrick Harvey? Elaine Smith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As the convener said early last year in the Chamber, as we debated the SPPA proposal to bring forward the committee bill on short money, I welcomed the clarification that it would bring in regard to the functions of the Parliament and the Scottish Government. And today I commend the work of committee members in their deliberations and scrutiny to get us to this stage, and thank the clerking support team too. It's a welcome move to further standardise arrangements across the parliamentary estate and ensure the allocations through short money deliver a consistency and support given to the party leaders. And as I said last year, I support the framework to further ensure that all opposition parties have the means to fully scrutinise the government. Bringing the management and decision making about short money clearly into the remit of the SPCB is welcome, since it doesn't make sense that the government should determine the funding of other political parties. I do though hope that this legislation will allow early discussion on some standardisation of terms and conditions across the workforce in the Parliament, and I want to highlight one anomaly in that regard. Staff employed through short money working in the leader's office of any party might be off sick for extended periods of time, might be on maternity leave or extended paternity leave, for example, and currently the cost of this must be met from within the short money allowance, and there's no arrangement in place that's equivalent to the contingency fund for staff directly employed by MSPs. When that contingency fund was introduced in the early days of this Parliament, it was partly to ensure that no unintended barriers were in place for MSPs, for example, when employing women or those with long-term health conditions, and it would obviously encourage positive action in recruitment practices. Whilst we of course know that any discrimination at point of recruitment is unlawful if proven, the fund ensured that MSPs could still be supported when staff were off for a period, and that's a real issue when working within a fixed budget. Without that provision, MSPs would be unable to staff their office to fulfil all constituency and parliamentary responsibilities. So it was therefore seen as a very progressive policy to agree the temporary cover fund in which all MSPs can draw, and it means that the work of an MSP is well supported and covered, and that also helps to ease the workload on those staff who are still at work, and it ensures that staff who do need to be off work don't feel any additional pressure. However, there's no such provision for short money staff cover. If the purpose of short money is to effectively support party leaders on an equal and fair basis, then I think the approach to staff absence after a 2-week period, as currently in place for other MSP staff, should also be applied, because we have a duty of care to all staff, regardless of their contract. So we now have the chance to address this with the passing of this legislation today, and I wanted to flag it up now so that the next session of Parliament can consider taking this forward. I think it's a necessary and desirable change that the SPCB should make at the very first opportunity. And on that note, Presiding Officer, I'm happy to support this bill on behalf of Scottish Labour. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Smith. And can I now call on Patrick Harvey to wind up on behalf of the Standards, Procedures and Public Appointments Committee. Mr Harvey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm very happy to close on behalf of a committee which I've not been a member of throughout this process. So in thanking the fellow members of the committee, the convener and the officials and everyone who has helped get this bill to this stage, I'm aware that I'm also offering that thanks on behalf of my predecessor on the committee, Mark Ruskell, who would have been part of the committee's work during more of this process. As the last speaker, Elaine Smith, mentioned, there are longer term questions about how the system for allocating this resource to political parties might be changed in the future. But it's important to restate just one more time that this bill is not the place for debating any overarching change to the system. The system has been the responsibility, the decisions have been the responsibility of the SPCB for some time, but this bill merely changes the technical placing of that responsibility to Parliament rather than to government. And as Bill Kidd, the convener, emphasised, it doesn't change the actual scheme of support. That may be debated at some time in the future, and if that happens, it should be a wide debate and an open-minded one. Graham Day, on behalf of the government, also made it clear that this change is supported by the government. It doesn't make sense for the responsibility for setting out this scheme to rest with government, when in reality we know that it should be a decision that's made by the SPCB on behalf of the whole Parliament. That's what this bill seeks to do. And in drawing up these plans, the committee did consult widely with MSPs, political parties, the Bureau, the government, the Electoral Commission, and I think it's pretty clear that we have a change that's coming through this bill which carries a strong degree of consensus with it. I don't think it's necessary to use up all the time that's available, given that we're already a little bit late for decision time, Presiding Officer. So can I just wind up once again by thanking colleagues for helping to get this bill to this stage, including the officials who've supported the committee's process, and can I commend the bill and invite members to pass the resolution at decision time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Harvey, and I'm sure members will join me in thanking you for your brevity too. That concludes the debate on Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Bill. We're going to move straight to decision time, and there are two questions today. The first question is that motion 24025 in the name of Edward Mountain on construction and procurement of ferry vessels in Scotland be agreed. Are we all agreed? We are all agreed. Now the second question is that motion 23674 in the name of Bill Kidd on Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Bill at Stage 3 be agreed. Now, because this is an Act of Parliament, we're going to have to move to a vote, and therefore I'm going to suspend Parliament for a few moments to allow members, both here in the Chamber and online, to access the voting app. Parliament is suspended for a few moments. Thank you, colleagues. The broadcast has started, so I'm going to resume proceedings, and we're going to go straight to the vote. So the question is that motion 23674 in the name of Bill Kidd on Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Bill at Stage 3 be agreed, and members may cast their votes now. This will be a 1-minute division. That vote is now closed. If any member was not able to vote, let me know through a point of order. Mike Rumbles.
For some reason, we can't get my phone to work, so I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Rumbles. Mr Rumbles would have voted yes. I will make sure that vote is added to the voting roll. Mr Stewart, Kevin Stewart.
Of order, my screen has gone completely blank, so I don't know what's happened there. I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. Thank you, Mr Stewart. You did vote, Mr Stewart, and that has been recorded. And I can tell Mr Scott, John Scott, that your vote was registered. It did count. Rhoda Mackay, I can tell you that you did vote. Your vote was recorded. And Alexander Burnett, I can tell you that your vote also was registered. And Claire Hockey, your vote was registered too. And Colin Beattie, your vote was also registered. Thank you very much, colleagues. The result of the vote on motion 23674 in the name of Bill Kidd is yes, 111. There were no votes against, there were no abstentions. The motion is agreed and the Scottish Parliament Assistance for Political Parties Scotland Bill is passed. Thank you very much, colleagues, and that concludes decision time. Just before members go, I would remember and encourage them to wear their masks, observe social distancing, follow the one-way systems. And I close this meeting.